Hey everybody, welcome back to Shop Talk. Obviously, I just got off work and decided I hadn't thrown a video up in a while. Like I said, I was going to try and do so. I think what I want to do is I want to talk about just recently. I got the opportunity to do my third sermon, so I want to give you a little bit of a recap of that, and then something that kind of took place that night that I thought was really kind of cool, and just kind of how it hit me. So my sermon, we were in the middle of doing a 3 part um, series on marriage at our church, and my part was week 2, and it's all about not giving up on one another. And of course, this is a big issue in our culture right now. And unfortunately, it's not just our society and just like the secular world. It's the Christian world too. And we're at a point where basically 50% of marriages end in divorce. And so part of that, in order to understand what's going on, we got to understand maybe what some of the causes are. And so that was what the approach that I took for this sermon. And so I threw out and kind of covered 4 different reasons that we give up on one another. And so the first reason that I said that we tend to give up on one another is we live in a throwaway society. So the old days, we fixed things. We tried to make things work. They had extra value. They were worth fixing. And nowadays, it's just cheaper to buy things that are new and just throw away the broken things. And I think this thought process, this mentality has really carried over into our marriages as well. So that was the first reason. The second reason is that we've forgotten the definition of marriage. I think with so much fighting, we on trying to get the government to recognize certain types of marriages and all of this, we've gotten lost in what marriage actually was. And so our government didn't recognize marriage until 1913, and they did it not for marriage; they did it for taxes. And so I think as Christians, we have forgotten that we're not married because the government says we're married. We're married because we have a covenant relationship with one another and with God, and that's what really matters. And so we need to remember that when it comes to marriage, it's not a contract, it's a covenant, and it's not an obligation, some sort of legal obligation that you have. It's a relationship. And so it doesn't matter if the government recognizes it or not. We are married because our covenant is with our spouse and God. So the third reason, and this is a big one in our society now, is we've forgotten our roles. Uh, we've got all these fighting on whether a man should be the leader of the household, and biblically, yes, he should be. He should be a man and step up and lead. And the secular world just does not like this idea. And I think part of the problem is we're not understanding what good leadership really looks like. And so leadership, the greatest leaders are not the ones who point and say go. They're the ones that say come follow me. And so as husbands and as fathers, we need to be leading by example. It should be, come follow me in my prayer life. Come follow me in reading the Bible. Come follow me in going to church and helping the church, serving the church. It should be you leading them to Jesus. It doesn't always work that way. 93% of the time when a father is the first one to come to Christ, his family will follow him. It's like 17%, I think it was, if the mother is. Now, that doesn't mean that women should not try. Peter, in fact, says that you, by living as a Christian and living and fulfilling your role, you can possibly, without words, convince your husband to become a believer just by your belief. So it doesn't mean that wives should give up, but I think it's really key to remember that a good leader is not somebody who's going to point and say go. It's somebody who's going to lead by example and say, come follow me. And the final reason that we have gotten so prone to just giving up on one another is that we've forgotten the definition of love. We seem to think that love has to do all with attraction and sexual desire and all of this stuff. And that it's a noun. Love is more of a verb. Love's not easy. It takes work. It takes, it's not 50-50 like people seem to think. We should be giving, love should be based not on how much the other person deserves it, but based on your love for Christ. So you should always work, whether it's at a job or if it is in your marriage, whatever, you should be working as though it's for the Lord. It's not based on what the other person deserves. And that's a lot like our salvation. Our marriages should reflect the love of Christ. It should be this, this light that they see that something is different. And then that's my sermon. That was the basic overview of the sermon. And then that night, I don't know if I've mentioned it. I help with the youth group, the high schoolers, and we went to a worship night over in Twin Lakes, and it was really, really cool. They had two guys there, and they were from Kansas City, and they had no music in front of them. One guy played the keys, and the other guy played guitar, and they sang, and they had no music in front of them, no words. They just sang. They even took a request and just boom, they fired it up. But somebody asked them, what's a verse that's really spoken to you lately? And the one guy said Ephesians 4:1. And this is when Paul is talking about living a life that is worthy of your calling. And, when I thought that fit really well with the marriage sermon that we were in, that series, because part of our calling is to be a husband and a father for me, or being a wife and a mother for if it's, I think sometimes we think God can't do much with us. And I think we need to live a life as though we need to understand that no matter how big or small you are in the grand scheme of things, God can do big things with you. You may never see the results of it, but you may have planted a seed that you had no idea that the impact that you end up having. And so I think living this idea that God has a purpose for you, He has a plan for you, I think just that verse really, when he said it, and it just hit me different. I don't know why, but it really hit me different that we should live a life worthy of our calling. Even if you don't know what that calling is, just know that God is going to do something with you. And therefore, we need to live a life worthy of whatever He's going to do. And just know that He can do great things with so little. So there's a brief overview. Thanks for everything, guys, and for watching. And hopefully I can be a little more consistent at some point on these things. So as always, stay salty and be kind, my friends.